I'd like to welcome everybody to another session of Learning with Samford. And I have my daughter Jessica and grandson Jackson with us here. And we're going to be talking about the current situation between Israel and Palestine today. Jackson or Jessica, some opening comments before we dig into the meat.
I'm excited to be here to learn and discuss.
Yes, we have a lot to there's so much gray area that we are about to unpack, and I'm excited for it.
All right. Um, and I'm going to try to monitor our time here, and I forgot. I didn't do a very good job of that. So, um, we wanted to talk about the current ceasefire agreement. And one of the things is to distinguish that this is not a peace agreement. This is strictly a ceasefire. We have a ways to go before we get a peace agreement, and I think we all hope that they can work out the details. And we'll discuss that a little bit tonight about the heavy lifting they'll have to go on to accomplish this. Um, do you know anything at all about the ceasefire before I get into the details? Pretty blank slate, blank
I
slate.
mean, yeah, I know it was like organized. I know it's pretty flimsy at the moment, but that's all I've heard.
Okay, the initial agreement is that the fighting would stop and uh, Hamas would release all of the living and the deceased hostages. And in return, um, Israel would release pretty close to 2,000. There are around 1,700, just kind of like regular prisoners, and then there were 250, well, what they Israel would call more hardcore that have been sentenced for a longer period of time, the 1,700 were a lot of them were just picked up after October 7th, as I think probably more as a bargaining chip as well. And then Israel would withdraw to what they call a yellow line. They're still in Gaza, but they've backed out a ways, and Palestinians can go back into their areas. The current difficulty is Hamas has released all of the living hostages, but they have only released a handful of the deceased, and it does appear it's a logistics problem. That some of them were probably killed October 7th. Some died early in the fighting, the bombings there of Gaza and probably both at the hands of Hamas and accidentally by the bombings in Israel with collapsed tunnels and so on. Uh, they're probably underneath a lot of the debris, and that will take some time. Now, whether that will throw a monkey wrench because Israel is not inclined to believe Hamas, uh, for good reason, and vice versa. The Palestinians, Hamas, have good reason not to believe anything that Israel says. So it's the trust issue is really tough, and that's why what's built into President Trump's 20-point peace plan is some commissions and some other third parties to come in and hopefully help control this. And so far, President Trump and his envoys have been really forcefully talking to Israel and Hamas to keep the lid on because there's still some killing going on. Some of the Palestinian people don't, there's no Israel is putting in some like yellow colored concrete for the line, but at the beginning, there's no line you can see. So Palestinians going back to their homes in the Israeli occupied area didn't know where that was, and some of them then have been killed as they've approached the line. The Israelis argue that they don't know whether it's Hamas or a threat, and so civilians are getting killed in that way. There may have been a Hamas attack also earlier. So a lot of gray areas trying to figure out what is going on with that. So, do you have any questions about the current ceasefire?
Um, I have heard a bit about the issues with the aid getting into Gaza and all of that. Um, if this ceasefire in this current state, is that going to help the Gazans, or is that just going to keep it kind of as it is, and they still aren't going to be able to receive the aid that they are trying to get?
And thank you, Jackson, because I left out that that's another part of the ceasefire stipulation, then, that aid would be allowed to flow freely to the Palestinians in Gaza. And so far, the Israelis have not allowed that, partly because they haven't gotten the bodies back. So Hamas hasn't fulfilled. So they said we won't fulfill the entire obligation until that. I know that the UN, the United States, and other groups are working hard to get more aid in there. They're trying to get third parties to come in and make sure that the food gets directly to the people. There is aid coming in through the Israel Gaza, but that there's not as much coming in. It needs to come in through Egypt, through the southern, the Rafah crossing down on the southern end to really be effective. So we're kind of in a wait and see. You kind of hope each day there'll be some progress because I did read today that there is starvation is at I believe they put a level 5 for certain people in there, and there are resulting deaths, and so it is desperately needed, and hopefully, but right now, not going too good. All right.
Who's
Um,
monitoring any of this? Who's
well,
like the middle ground?
right. At this point, the United States has 200 soldiers that are located in Israel, but they're putting together, and this was part of the 20-point peace plan, is that they would help put together a group that would go on I believe it's called the International Stabilization Force, and it would be made up of hopefully some of the Gulf area countries, but I know Indonesia has said they would send troops. Um, there's been some other countries. I had mentioned to both of you before we began our recording here that Turkey has been involved in the negotiations for this ceasefire, but Israel has said they will not allow any Turkish troops to come in as part of this force because Erdogan, they feel, has taken too much of a hostile attitude towards Israel. So that'll be another thing. These will have to be countries that have not stepped on toes too much, um, and there I'm probably getting ahead where I wanted to go, but I will mention that any Gulf state, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, who are Egypt, who have been involved in these negotiations, they've been long supporters of the Palestinian people, but they're wanting to develop relationships with Israel. Uh, and they don't want to have troops sitting there um, that Hamas might attack. And then here they are who have supported Hamas in the past and the Palestinian people, and now they're fighting. And so I think there'll be a reluctance. Another part of not directly the ceasefire yet, but a later point is Hamas supposedly agreed that they would disarm. And eventually Israel would withdraw. There's a second line that they would withdraw to before they would then withdraw completely out of Gaza. Um, I just I can't see Hamas disarming completely. They may give up for show some weapons. Um, right now, currently, they are eliminating gangs that had proliferated, and also Israel had supplied arms to certain groups hoping to take on Hamas. So they're trying to re-exert their control, but part of the peace agreement is it's not going to be Hamas, it's going to be Palestinians. Now, we'll tell you, as part of the agreement, Egypt in particular, and I believe, I'm trying to remember my second country here, um, have had experience, Jordan was the one, have had experience training police officers. So there are Palestinians that are being trained as police officers to be brought in to help with the security. And I think that'll be important that Palestinians are protected by Palestinians. But that still, again, is more down the road because we're still in kind of a fluid moment here where we're not quite sure what's going to develop.
I don't want to take us off track, but
I already did, so that's fine.
yeah, okay. So if the Palestinians, Hamas disarm, what does
Well, it's
life look?
Hamas.
Okay,
Hamas.
Hamas.
Yes.
If Hamas disarms, what
They
does
are
life?
Palestinians, but they're the armed group.
Yes, yes. Okay. What is it? What does life look like for those people? What are they doing? Where does Hamas go back into?
Well, that part of the 20-point police plan is that they would eventually get them through various programs to reject violence and to just integrate into the community and be a positive force in the community. We've seen this with ISIS, some other groups where there's deprogramming that goes on with people who've been caught up in this, and it's had success at individual situations. Um, we've never taken on a large group. Um, Brian Catulus, who I interviewed this morning about these topics, he and I were discussing this. Um, there's an element of Hamas that will never change. And the only and their stated purpose is Israel cannot exist, and that's either through killing them or driving them into the sea. And you're not going to deprogram that element. On Israel's side, you have very right-wing Zionists who will only accept Israel's borders being back to biblical times, and that means no Palestine. So there's no two-state solution really with either group, Hamas or the right. And then a third group you have is, and I don't like using the term, but it's become synonymous with evangelical Christians with revelations that you will not have then the latter days and the um, Armageddon and the second coming until Israel's boundaries have been reestablished. And so there is a lot of money and support going to Israel to get those back. And so they don't see two state because that would go against bringing on the latter times. As Brian and I talked, it says that man knoweth not the date or the time of Armageddon and the return of Christ. And yet, as I pointed out, that hasn't stopped us Christians from trying to dictate what the date and the time is going to be. We have a hard time accepting that it's going to happen in its own time, and it's not necessarily something you want to try to do yourself. But those three forces is why it makes it so difficult because they're going to try to throw a monkey wrench into this whole thing. And monkey wrench is a nice word because they're going to use violence. And so they'll missiles, they'll do terrorist attacks, uh, anything to disrupt this peace process because they want no compromise. And each side wants the other one eliminated. Did that answer?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the tough. So yeah, right now it's estimated Hamas has about 10,000 soldiers still alive. And unless you can bring security to Gaza, um, all you're going to do is have young people become recruits for Hamas if Israel keeps, retaliating in some way. So what you want to do is to have a counter narrative to Hamas that gives them hope, and that is a two-state solution, which Netanyahu uh, opposes. But Trump just recently said you need to accept that. And Netanyahu said he would, but I think anyone that knows Netanyahu and the group that's really keeping him in power, they won't accept it. So that's again very tricky, very tricky. Um, the other thing that I thought you might be interested in is with the Peace Commission and the International Stabilization Force. Um, there's also a technocratic group. So you would bring in these people with expertise that would help with the rebuilding of Gaza. The problem there is you have 90% of Gaza has been either completely destroyed or heavily damaged. So it is going to take a long time to rebuild. And as Jaxon pointed out, you also have a humanitarian crisis going on. People are living in tents. It's going to be quite a while before you've dealt with the water, the sewage, just sanitary living conditions, places to make sure they live. Um, and I think the people are probably always going to have questions in their mind until everything is kind of realized there.
And what group is deciding what gets rebuilt and who's
Well,
paying for it?
President Trump is going to be the head of the Peace Commission, and Tony Blair, former Prime Minister from Great Britain, is also going to be in that commission. It does appear quite a few non-Palestinians, as Brian Katulis of the Middle East Institute and I this morning talked about. There has to be Palestinian voices, and there are some, as he told me, some really bright young individuals who are business oriented. That it would be great if we could see a little shifting of the 80-year-olds. Not that we have that here in the United States, but bringing on a younger vision than what you have leading the Palestinian Liberation Organization, the Palestinian Authority, which runs Brian told me this morning, runs the day-to-day operations. The PLO still sees itself as the leader of the Palestinian people. But Hamas um, won in an election in Gaza that got pushed the PLO out years and years ago. So you have those within the Palestinian people, these different groups and organizations that'll be competing. But it's almost like you need a new set. And there are a couple of individuals that the Israelis are holding for murder after the second intifada. And I don't know that they would ever release them. But here again, they're older. So we'll just have to see as this unfolds. And that's what's going on right now is the Trump and his emissaries, Steve Wyckoff, I think it's Tom Barrick, if I remember, Jared Kushner has been involved in this, businessmen that have had business ties. There is a little bit worry there because conflict of interest, are you getting business, so on. But it also did allow for this ceasefire because they were able to come in and really talk to these peoples in ways that maybe a diplomat wouldn't have. And Trump is the first president that has told Netanyahu and Israel what they're going to do. And we've never had that before. And he was always considered the greatest friend, Israel ever had. So this has been a kind of a shock to the system. But I think he felt, I think Jared said in the 60 Minutes interview that felt a little bit betrayed and that Israel had gotten out of control when they bombed the negotiators in Qatar. I mean, you know, you're saying you want to negotiate, but when you try to kill the negotiators, it doesn't look good that you really want to have any kind of negotiations or ceasefire. And that really was a real turning point. And he really forced Netanyahu to humiliate himself and apologize to the Qataris, which he does not like and views them as supporters of terrorism. So these have been quite the moments to see. And so that's why we're not sure what's going to happen as these next phases come along. It's hard work, and it is, as any expert on this area will tell you, you wouldn't want to put money on it in a betting situation, but that doesn't mean there aren't some slivers of hope.
Mhm.
Is there anything else you'd like to know about? We got a few minutes left.
Can you tell me just a little bit about Israel and Palestine? They have always kind of been at each other's throats. Has there ever been a war at like the one we're seeing right now in the past time since Israel has been post World War II? Have we seen a war kind of like this, and has it been resolved?
Yes, there's actually been multiple wars. Now, some of that has not been directly with the Palestinians all the time. It's been with the Arab countries. And so I was kind enough to send you guys timelines. So we won't have time to go through each of those wars right now. But that's my response to you is that ever since 1948, um, and we had the and senility's caught me here, the Nakba, in which the Palestinians see that as the time that they were all driven from their homes and their villages by the Israelis. The Israelis see it as a time that they're, number one, reclaiming the land that was given to them. And we don't have time to go into the Balfour Declaration either for establishment of an Israel. Uh, but after World War II, there's sympathy for Israel because of the Holocaust. The Palestinians see themselves as a victim of that because they see themselves as losing land. And now their argument is, well, we lived with Jews who've always lived in the area in peace. And it wasn't until the Zionist and the establishment, um, which it's fair and it's not fair. And it's the same way with the Israeli position. The Israeli position is fair, but it's not fair. I mean, you have two different peoples there that lay claim to the land. The Israelis will argue ours is biblical and so on, but then the Palestinians and then Palestine. Has it always been a country, or when did you start? There's all kinds of arguments and debates that go on about that, and those are never going to be resolved satisfactorily to everyone, depending on which side you're on. I just don't think there's an explanation that's going to be acceptable to you. So for the more moderate voices, trying to work all these different viewpoints and get some accommodation is really where we're at this stage. Um, at that time, also, Jackson, the Palestinians, large numbers of them fled to Egypt, to Jordan, to Syria. Jordan in particular. Jordan has ended up with more Palestinians than Jordanians in their country. And there's always been a fear that, they may take over Jordan. Uh, and what's been left out of this entire discussion is, well, if you rebuild Gaza, we haven't even talked about, maybe we can finish with the West Bank before we run out of time tonight, is that do you let the Palestinian refugees come back? But we're also talking about refugees that are now generations that didn't live in Palestine. Their parents are the ones and or grandparents, and they've died or are in extremely old age. And so you have, a generation that has no concept of their homeland because they've lived in these foreign countries for so long. And do they want to go back? Um, that I've not heard that discussed at all, and I wonder if that will eventually be brought up. And I wish I would have brought that up with Brian this morning, but we'll get a chance with some other speakers that we're going to have in here. Let me mention quickly the West Bank. The West Bank is occupied or controlled by Israel. It is Palestinian territory, um, and Palestinians are allowed to technically govern themselves within it. However, uh, the what we'll call the right-wing Zionist settlers have been breaking international law and killing and removing Palestinians and seizing their land. And this has been going on for quite a while. But since October 7th, that's really picked up speed, and it's also going on very strong right now since the ceasefire. And so more and more of that area is um, Jewish settlements and less Palestinian land. There was in the Knesset, the legislative body for Israel, a symbolic vote to annex the West Bank to Israel. And that Trump administration, I think it was J.D. Vance, it might have been Ruby, I think it was J.D. Vance, that said that's a no-go. Don't be doing that. But the U.S. government's going to have to really push back hard if they want to get any kind of settlement out of here against the far right extremism who really wants to take over the Palestinian land. So I give you an idea of where we currently are and a little bit of history.
Yes.
I mean, the
What
history is crucial to understand. Yeah.
what do you think is going to be the key to making any movement or progress with this?
You have to have security for the Palestinian people. You've got to be able to go in there, um, temper Hamas, temper the IDF and Israel, and stop the shooting of Palestinians because they don't know where the boundary is. Um, it, and then you've got to show them fairly quickly some money and you're rebuilding, but none of that can go on until you're safe and secure in your home. You
Yeah.
can't live in constant fear. And the Israelis are in the same situation because they can't live in fear that they're going to be attacked by Hamas again because October 7th was traumatic with them. So that to me is the number one in getting the humanitarian, and then Israel not feeling threatened by Hamas. Um, and so trying to get that force in there, but then I can't see it's going to be tough to put that force together, and it's going to be tough to get them to put the money into rebuilding if they think Israel is just going to come back in and destroy everything again. So, wish I had a
Yeah.
better answer, but I,
No,
I
it's
think
just
it's always
curious.
security,
Yeah.
stabilization has to come first. All right. See, we got Jaxon back.
Welcome back.
All right. I think we've been right at about 30 minutes, but do you have anything else you want to talk about?
I think we've summed it up pretty well.
Yeah.
All right.
I'll just share, but I think this is something we're going to try with different topics, and we're just learning together and discussing. This will keep evolving.
Yes, we're
Yes.
we're experimenting because this morning was our first expert, and tonight is our first time, the three of us. And normally, the three of us want to meet before we have the expert. and discuss things and so on. So yes, um, it'll be growing. It's like this plan here. We're going to have to evolve the plan. I do want to share with you very quickly, though, one thing that Brian did bring up that was very important, and he also has a quarterly that he gives a grade to U.S. government policy for the entire Middle East. But he made a good point in this document that he wrote that right now we do have non-diplomats with Kushner and Wyckoff, and he did point out the 60 Minutes interview. He really appreciated the fact that they looked at the humanitarian part. Wyckoff shared about his son dying, and just this stop the killing. Families and children. They seem to be very sincere at this, and that's probably what's needed at this moment. It doesn't matter the other. The other problem, though, or the problem that you see here is they're not using the experts, the bureaucrats, the ones who have been there a long time, who understand the Middle East. They understand who the players are. They understand what works and what doesn't work. What is it? How do you have to write these? Who do how do you put the details into the plan? It's one thing to have the plan, but we don't have people right now that know how to write the plan and get every detail worked out so that the plan doesn't fail. Um, so I think that's, Jessica, another key thing to look at as we move forward. And I thought that was probably a weakness in the Trump's first administration, is we heard all these great things that had been accomplished, but then when you looked, the details hadn't been worked out, and all of a sudden the factory wasn't coming where they said it was coming. Um, other aspects didn't pan out the way they said it was going to pan out, because I don't think they'd really had the people in place to work out the details to keep on it. It was like, here, I'm opening the shopping center, see you later, but then there's nobody there to run the shopping center. And it fails, but the publicity's already gone. And so people don't know that all of that little stuff behind the scenes is what makes so much of this successful. Okay. So I thought that's worth taking extra minutes for people to
Yes.
listen to.
Yeah.
All right. All right. So this concludes our very first episode with the three of us together. And hopefully you'll follow our YouTube channel. I know, Jessica, you're going to get us on some other things. I think you said Substack and
Hmm.
Instagram.
Yes.
Anyway, we'll be announcing some other things later on. So we wanted to get this kicked off, and we'll have our you people that are viewing this here down the road, that you'll come back and check out our other episodes. So thank you, and good night.